Hi. So I took care of Jeff when he came in the hospital. He was injured January 17th, 2002. So it's pulling on my memory banks a little bit to remember all this. But he lost a battle with a semi-truck in a car accident. And when he came into the hospital, he was basically in a coma. We do a coma scale that goes from 3 to 15. 15 is normal, 3 is in a total coma. No eye opening, no verbalization, no command following, no motor movement. And that's where Jeff was when he came in. He was on the trauma service for almost a month. He, in addition to a severe head injury with a brainstem contusion and what we call shear injury, which is injury to the nerve and how the axons in the brain connect to each other. He had a jaw fracture. He had a fracture at the base of his skull. He had to have a trach put in, which is a tube in the throat so he could breathe. He had to have a PEG tube put in, which is a tube in the stomach because he couldn't eat, so he had to be fed. He had a halo placed, which is basically a ring around the skull with 4 screws that bolted it into the skull with 4 posts that come down and a vest that locks your neck into place so that the fracture at the base of his skull and his upper neck could heal. After a month, he was able to come to the rehab unit where I took care of him. When he came to rehab, he didn't vocalize, he didn't follow commands, he could barely move his left arm and leg, and he couldn't move his right arm or his right leg at all. He went through extensive occupational and physical and speech therapy. After about a month, he started to follow some commands, so he wasn't even command following at first. After about 2 months, he improved to the point where he was oriented, so he could tell us date and time and where he was at. Around that time, he started to get some increased movement in his arms and his legs. He developed something called spasticity, which is where you get a lot of stiffness in your muscles. You can get that after a brain injury or a stroke, but his arms basically locked up at the elbows and he couldn't move them, so we had to do something called Botox injections to loosen up his elbows so that they would move again more freely. He went through more therapy for another month. By the end of 3 months, he was ready to leave our rehab unit. At that time, he could transfer in and out of bed on his own to a wheelchair and propel a wheelchair short distances. As far as walking, he could go 50 feet with a walker, but he needed 50% assistance to do that. So somebody else was basically helping him do half of what he did, and he did the other half. After that, he did extensive outpatient therapies, and he's continued to do therapy until this time. Every time I see Jeff, he makes some improvement compared to where he was at before. He's never given up. He's worked harder than probably anybody else I can think of in his recovery. And I think his recovery and his commitment to his recovery has been amazing. He has also given back. He does stuff with the hospital with a program called Drive Alive that helps to teach kids the risk of substance use in driving or other issues that can lead to unsafe driving practices. I know he does a lot of public speaking. This despite the fact that when he left us, he had a lot of trouble with his speech. He's overcome all those things to just become an amazing man.